shadow we stand today, signed the Emancipation Proclamation. This momentous decree came as a great beacon light of hope to millions of Negro slaves who had been seared in the flames of withering injustice. It came as a joyous daybreak. Good morning, everyone. Welcome back. I'm your host, Terry Hawkins. Thank you for joining us this morning as we continue our show with To Be BlindEd and Dream Smart Behavioral Solutions. What better way to start the new year out than with just hearing some key words from Reverend Dr. Martin Luther King, and we can all relate to that speech either through our parents or just hearing his voice. And how do we continue as a people, as a culture, how do we continue to erase the stain that plagues our nation, racism and bigotry and hate in all cultures? How do we erase that? So I'm joined this morning by my beautiful co-host, Stephanie Mona.
Hey, Steph.
And my man, Jazzy Jeff Morris.
What's cracking, everybody? Hello.
How you guys doing this morning?
We're good. We're ready.
Awesome. So this morning, we're going to talk about critical race theory. Now, I know both of you have been doing your homework, as I, but I'm going to tell you this morning, I'm not going to claim to be an expert, but I will claim to have a PhD in life experiences with people of all culture. Let me just say that. So before we start this morning, I want to lay down some of the ground rules. As always, this is a show about how do we bring people together. As we like to say, we're not calling people out, we're calling people together as we continue to take this journey in this thing called life. So this morning, we're going to be talking about critical race theory. And so I just want to kind of frame it, and I'll kind of give my pitch to what critical race theory is. I believe it is. And of course, there's no, we got a lot of conversation about what it is and what we should be doing. So for me, critical race theory is it's just a framework that suggests racism is systemic in America. At a 30,000 foot level, that's what I get from it as I read and what we're trying to do. So it is a body of ideas, and it's an approach that looks at how racism is unfair and how it has affected a culture of people. And I think when you look at it from maybe a 10,000 foot level, it tends to vilify white people, and it tends to make black people feel inferior.
Now, is that your personal opinion?
That's my personal opinion. Yeah, absolutely. That's my personal opinion. Again, but we just want to have some conversation. So, Stephanie, I want to start with you. Then we'll move on to Jeff. Critical race theory. What are your guys' thoughts on that?
Okay, so I didn't really know what it was until you assigned me my homework this last month. And I have been reading it. It is, I think, well, we'll get into what it actually is, but I think a lot of it, because there's so much going into it, they're including the diversity, equity, and inclusion. It seems to be lumped in with it. So everything is becoming this critical race theory, CRT. And I've heard about it. I don't agree with it should be taught, but I do agree it exists. Clearly, our nation was founded on racism. Mm-hmm. So it is in every system, the healthcare system, the educational system, the judicial system. Mm-hmm. So it is embedded. What do we do now?
Okay.
And so I understand that we need to acknowledge it, but we have to do better so that we don't. So to say you can't have critical race theory taught in school, I don't think it should be taught, but you can't say it doesn't exist.
Sure.
And we need to acknowledge it so that we can make better decisions.
Mm-hmm. And so when you say it's not taught or it's taught in schools?
No, I don't think it should be.
You don't think it should be?
But that's like the big debate.
Okay, so
we weren't taught racism in school.
Right.
We were taught respect.
Right.
But other school systems
Right.
aren't as lucky as we are.
Right.
And it really is prevalent in their environments. So where do those little kids, when they're faced with it, do they need to be taught that is? We were just lucky.
Right. Right. That's a great point. Hold that thought. I want to go to Jay real quick. And Jeff, I want you to chime in, and then I want to come back to Jeff. Your kids have both a black parent and a white parent. I want to understand, what do you tell your children? Stephanie, you grew up as a white woman. You went to high school with us, so we know you. And then get your thought on that, and how do we navigate that in the world we're in now? Because we know in the news, in schools, now they're trying to teach this thing now where they're trying to remove the word slavery to make indigenous servants. I don't think that's right. I don't think that's right at all. But anyway, I don't want to tread on that. But Jay, let me have you chime in, and then I want to circle back to that question I just raised. So
there's a strong political movement to erase the stain of slavery from American history, and I think that's a mistake. Right? So we don't want to minimize the fact that America, in many countries, but we're talking about America today,
right,
has a past where people were made to serve and produce against their will. That's a fact. We don't want to ever minimize that fact. But what we can't do is stay stuck in that fact. Right? We can't stay stuck in the fact. When we look back on the founders' history, when we really studied the founders' history, the founders struggled with this very question. Right? There were many people who did understand, well, if America is truly going to be free in the land of the free, home of the brave, and all the stuff that they mentioned, well, then how could we have this sin of slavery? And it was coming to a head. The North and the South, when we read American history, there was a movement, the abolitionist movement in the North.
That's correct.
That was headed up against the movement in the South, right? And they came to a head. Many of our founding fathers, some owned slaves, and we know that.
Sure.
Right? But many struggled with the idea of owning slaves, right? We have to take all things into context.
Right.
When we're thinking about the culture at the time, right? What was the culture at the time? What was the environment at the time? But many of them did struggle with the idea of everybody being free. Then how do we hold people against their own will? Right. Today, that's still a struggle. Not the struggle that was then, but we do struggle because of the power of difference being noted in, like Stephanie said, healthcare and education and housing.
Right.
Those things are real.
Right. Real estate. Both you guys were real estate. You guys in real estate. The redlining. Right. I mean, you guys know that, and a lot of people know that who in real estate. A lot of people don't know that.
Yeah.
They go, wow, they really did. Yes. That is a fact. That is not something that I'm making up. You guys are made of. You guys know that. You guys are in real estate. You guys know that. So, and I want to bring up to your point, Jay, when you talk about emancipation, as Dr. King mentioned in his speech, but what emancipation did for us and what it didn't do for us, they set slaves free, but they starved. No land, no job, no nothing. How is that freedom? I set you free, but I set you free to be impoverished? How is that equality? It's not. So again, we talk about the Emancipation Proclamation in school, but the backside to that, if you read about this, they starved. They had nothing. You set us free, but we had nothing, no job, no land, no nothing, right? We didn't have anything. So how do you combat that? So why do we keep talking about emancipation? How was that free, right? So we got a lot of things that's in that.
That should be taught, the backside?
Absolutely.
Yeah.
That's part of the history.
It's part of the history.
So, you can't just whitewash over that.
Right.
And then it'll make more sense for people.
Right.
Yes.
The past only stays in the past.
Right.
Right.
So isn't that an argument for critical race theory to be taught?
No.
No.
Not in my opinion.
No. What I'm saying is we got to teach both sides of it.
Yeah. Okay. We have to be authentic and transparent about the history.
We got to be authentic. Because what happens is go, oh, yeah, but the emancipation set you free. Yeah, but what it also did, we starved because we didn't have land. We didn't have.
But there's two sides to that too, Hawk. When we got to take history in its
absolutely
context.
no agree.
When we study the Emancipation Proclamation. Again, that was the idea,
Correct.
right? But the implementation has taken time.
Right.
When we study that history, there were black senators,
Sure.
there were black congressmen.
Absolutely.
Again, there's two sides of the movement. There was one movement going, no, we don't want that. There's another movement going, no, we do want this.
Absolutely.
Right? Especially in the South, when we think about history from the South,
Absolutely.
that's not what they wanted. Even when slaves were set free,
Yeah.
those very same slaves or those very same people worked the same plantation under low wages.
Absolutely.
It was an economic decision for the former master. They didn't have any more labor force. The slaves didn't have anywhere to go. So they made this agreement. My parents are sharecroppers
I was
from the
going to
South.
say, touch on that a little bit. Your dad.
My parents
yeah.
are sharecroppers from the South.
Yeah.
My grandfather, grandmother
Yeah.
farmed 300 acres. We were both sides of my family.
Mm-hmm.
They were sharecroppers. They worked the white man's land, and they got a percentage of that land and a percentage of the food.
Yeah.
It's called sharecropping,
Absolutely.
right? Now, not always were the benefits equal,
Yeah.
but that's how they had to make a living,
Yeah.
right?
Right.
And from that sharecropping system, my father, decided to move from South Carolina to like a lot of people of color did, blacks especially, in this great migration north in the 60s. They moved from the South and places like that. They moved to D.C.,
Right.
to Detroit, to Chicago.
Right.
There's a great migration north in hopes of equality. That was
Right.
my dad's and my mother's vision, is how do we get our sons into a society where they can have equal opportunity for each other.
Yeah.
So they moved, right, to Washington, D.C.,
Yeah.
right? So, again, we don't want to negate the history of what has taken place, but we
Right.
can't stay stuck there,
That's correct.
right? There's always been two sides of the coin: those who wanted equality, who lost life for it,
Sure.
versus those who were making an economic decision
Sure.
to keep their way of life. It was
Yeah.
always two sides,
Right.
right? So we got to keep both of those in mind.
Yeah. As John Lewis would say, good trouble.
Good, right,
Good trouble.
right,
Right.
So,
So let me kind of jump back to the other question that I asked. So Stephanie and Jade, I want you guys kind of think about this. So when we talk about critical race theory, and again, I don't claim to be an expert, right? But I do know, and I have lived. I have friends on both sides, and I have heard conversations about both sides. So I'll start with you, Stephanie. What do you teach your children that you, and based on your environment that you grew up in? And then Jay, I want to kind of spin that off. And what do you teach your children? Because your children are products of a black dad and a white mom, two wonderful parents who have taught them to be themselves in this world, right? And how do you embrace that? So Stephanie, what do you teach your children? How do you teach them to see the world? Because you are behind this movement. Believe it or not, you are behind this movement.
I grew up in a bubble, and I moved to another bubble. So when I grew up in Charles County, we were in a beautiful la la land of. I mean, I guess there was racism. I didn't see it, but y'all said you felt some, but very minor. Not in our circle. So honestly, I didn't think it existed. I didn't until I went out into the world. But then I moved from here to Malibu. And Malibu, like another bubble.
Right.
The Malibu bubble.
Malibu.
the hood of Malibu, the hood of Malibu.
My Delaney's best friend was Jamie Foxx's daughter.
Oh,
so it's
wow.
like, to be a black guy in Malibu, you have your own plane. You have 12 cars. You pull up his house. There's like 12, different fancy sports cars. So same thing with them. We don't. If anything, they're probably like, well, I wish I was black. You know what I mean? Like, So I'm a bad person to ask, I guess.
No, you're not, because I want your perspective.
Your
perspective.
Well, I am.
Yeah.
I think it's a beautiful way to live, and I hope that's how the rest of this
it
ends up being like that. But I don't see the difference. I really honestly don't. I know my dad, and this is like the 60s, he had black friends, and I didn't think anything of it. Now looking back, like, wow, that was pretty progressive.
Yeah.
But he had gay friends too.
Yeah.
Again, very progressive.
Yeah.
My dad was just a cool dude.
Yeah.
And we grew up cool.
Right. And so,
But I
that
guess
lends
the
to
only
your-
way to so I guess what I'm trying to say is what I teach them is like the only way to stop discrimination on the basis of race is to stop discriminating on the basis of race. So how do you do that unless you do know the whole story?
yeah,
So I think I haven't done it, but after reading this and seeing it, I don't want it to be taught in school. I think it has to be done at home. But there probably are some things need to be cleared up
Sure, absolutely.
Yeah.
Like
because
we,
they have questions.
right.
I'm sure.
yeah,
And the way that we, again, have progressive movement going forward is when we have these authentic conversations,
right,
right? When we talk about the differences that we experience growing up, right? Your father being progressive and having friends. Again, it's the two sides of the coin, right? Your father probably could have been looked down upon because he did see the world, right, differently. Right, my dad could have been looked down by his own people. Was criticized for moving from one place in D.C. where it's primarily African American,
Barry
black,
Farms, baby, Barry
right,
Farms.
in Barry Farms, and he was criticized by his own people, saying, "Why are you moving away?"
Yeah,
Right, instead of saying, "Hey, man, have at it, and please be successful, and bring
Right.
some more people with you."
sure,
Right, that's the idea that we promote.
exactly,
Right, is how do we get to a position of influence, and how do we begin to create a training camp, a development camp, and a coaching camp to help people get to the next level of all colors.
right.
Right.
Without seeing color, is that what
Yeah.
you're saying?
Well,
Without
no,
seeing,
you can always see color.
I mean, but without holding that to a certain degree as a barrier,
Sure.
for success.
Sure.
That in that aspect.
And when we're talking about home, that's one thing that my kids were taught. We will not let racism be an excuse for us not to succeed in this world.
Yeah,
It will not be an excuse here. Does it exist? Absolutely. It will always exist.
yeah,
Because people are different and they see difference
right,
and they're not willing to deal with the difference.
right,
So we're never going to get rid of that.
right,
But that don't mean that we can't get better.
right.
Progressively
That's a great
get
point.
better.
That's a great point.
Right. So my kids, multiracial, mother's German and Italian.
Yeah,
Right. I have Native American in my family, but my kids are of mixed race.
yeah,
And we always said celebrate both cultures.
right,
Because no culture has it all together. No culture is without stain,
Right.
right, of not having things that need to be improved upon.
right,
Right. So my kids grew up understanding they had an Italian side of their family and a German
Yeah.
side of the family. Never hid that.
yeah,
And my family, right, they would visit South Carolina. They knew that they had a great great grandmother that was, half Cherokee. I mean, she was full blood Cherokee Indian. My grandfather was half Native American, half black.
yeah.
That's a whole nother story about Native Americans and blacks.
Sure.
Right. It's a whole nother story that we won't talk about today, but my kids understand the value of all culture.
Right.
Living in where we live, they have friends of, Asian, Filipino,
Yeah.
Pacific Islander, from all over.
Yeah.
So they'll grow up understanding multiple perspectives, right? No perspective is right, all right,
Yeah.
right? But when we can have these conversations, we can make things better.
Yeah.
Now, Hawk, what about you? You raised Kiana and little Malcolm.
Yeah.
How you raising them?
Yeah, that's a great point. Yeah, I like both your perspectives. So I gotta say, for me, having gone to Howard University, that Howard taught me to embrace the heart of people
True.
and to not embrace the differences in people. So I see people, I see success. I don't see he's the first black mayor. I see he's a mayor who's happened to be black.
Right.
Or he's a governor, like Westmore, right? First black governor of Maryland. I'm like, well, he's people may side and may say, I'm a sellout, but I just see a black man who is successful, who's the governor of Maryland, who happens to be black. Okay. Do I say, all down with that, forget everything that Governor Hogan put in, change the word? No. Take what works, figure out how you're going to govern the state of Maryland, and hopefully people will get behind him. And hopefully people will applaud his success in things that he do and not try to impede him because he's black. Because we have a tendency to do that. We see a black person or a white person or Filipino or Asian or Indian, the ideas could be great, but people discount them because of color, because they see race. And we got to stop looking at race as a thing, but I'm not going to go along with it because they're black. I like the idea, but I'm not going to support it because they're black. And I think that's what we get in. That's the state of the United States right now. But what I've taught my daughter is to love people, to embrace culture. But what Howard has taught both of us is to never sell yourself short. Yeah, I'm a black man. She's a black woman, and I teach Malcolm. You know, you're a young black male, and I do teach him. Hey, you're a young black male. Some of the things that you do will be scrutinized harder because that's the reality.
That's the reality.
So that's why when he goes out in the world, hey, I tell him, hey, you represent me. You're a black man. You're a young black male now, but as you get older, and sophomore year, high school, junior, when you come out and start working, when you walk through the door, they're going to see color. Period. I don't care. They're going to see color. Then when you submit your resume, they're going to see your name. But when you walk through that door, and the world will say, well, white people have an edge on this, and Asian people have an edge on that, and Hispanic people have an edge in this culture. We need to get away from that. We need to make sure that we are training our children. I know you guys are, that we should be helping everybody succeed. It's not about what culture is better. And I think as the United States, we always want to say, Asians are better at this, and Hispanics are better at this, and this culture is better, which goes into my, and this is probably for another conversation, when you talk about exceptionalism in the United States. The only exception is that we should be treating everybody equal. No culture is better than anybody. But when you talk about exceptionalism in the United States and in corporate America and in culture, you get into the religion. This religion's better. Who knows for sure which religion is better, right? But again, people use that as a way to, like you said, divide. People use anything to divide: religion, culture, money. If you got more money and then the next person, the person with less money, you try to make them feel, less than who they are as a human. And so we got to stop all of that. And we really got to learn to just embrace people and love people and help everybody succeed. So I want to go back to your question about, well, this is another question for both of you guys. So in the world that we live in now, right? Of course, we know it's different than when we were coming through high school. And then I'm going to bring this up too for everybody who know Stephanie, Jeff, and I. Our Coach Larry Johnson was instrumental in so many people's life, and I don't really think he does. I think he does, but I don't know if he realizes the amount of people that he touched, especially in high school. And Coach K, they were the foundation that brought and unified our high school. When you look back at it, when you look back at all of the sport, I mean, how many championships came out of that school in our era, man? And we had a diverse culture at McDonough. There was a diverse culture there. It wasn't all black, wasn't all white. It was a diverse culture. But those two, as head coach and of course Mr. Short, the principal, they made sure that race was not an issue. And I think when you have people in the world or administrators or leaders like that, that is what's going to make our schools better, in my opinion. What do you guys think about that? Because I know they were very instrumental in my life. So
mine too. And I think when we're talking about critical race theory, we go into thinking that stereotypes that white schools are going to have more money, black schools are going to have less money. So if they have more money, they have better teachers or whatever. I don't know. We didn't really grow up in I wouldn't say it was a wealthy school. It wasn't poor. It was completely, maybe it might have been on the poorer side. I have no idea. But like as far as guidance counselors, we didn't, I don't even know if we had one. Like I didn't even know about college until after everybody was already going. And it was like, oh, well, I want to go too. But instead, because I hadn't been exposed to even the conversation, I ended up at 13th grade over at the community college, you know what I mean? Until I figured out what I was going to do, and then I went to college. But you guys, having Coach Johnson, he was like, you guys want to go to college, I will get you into college.
Yeah.
And so every single one of you that wanted to go got to go. So you very lucky.
Yeah.
But it's people like Dad. It wasn't about money, the school's money. It was about having leaders
Having leaders
that
Absolutely.
cared.
Absolutely. Absolutely. That's so true.
So,
That's so true.
yeah.
Well, we're talking about leadership in the home, leadership in the education system, leadership in corporate America.
Mhm.
That's the key to having things will never be equal. People say we want things to be equal. It won't be like that. But we can strive for equity,
Right.
giving people what they need to succeed.
Yeah, and I like your term. You said access.
Right.
Kind of dive into that a little bit, Jay. I know we talk about, the big buzzword now in corporate America. Everybody's talking about diversity, equity, and inclusion.
Yeah.
But you added access. So kind of tap on that a little bit, man, as it relates to critical race theory, if you can tie that in.
The point I was going to make about things being equal, things will never be fair. Life ain't fair. How many times have you said that to your kids? Life ain't fair.
Right.
But that doesn't mean that we can't ask that it be just.
Right.
We can strive for justice.
Right.
We can strive for equity for all. Equality for all, yes. Right. But we want equity for all.
Right.
Meaning you're going to get what you need to succeed. You're going to get what you need to succeed. I'm going to get what I need to succeed, because what we all need to succeed are different. It's different.
Right.
It's not the same for everybody.
Right.
It's a difference between being a leader and a manager. Right. Manager manages everybody the same way. Right. Leaders give people what they need. They give people equity. Right. So what we want to strive for is equity in our society.
So when you say access, that means, let's say if a person has needs to improve on a certain skill set, a leader will say, "Let me get you training in that." A manager will say, "No, you just do it this way."
This way that's supposed to be done.
Okay, great point.
Right.
Great point.
This gets into some of the Dream Smart stuff.
Great point.
It
does.
Right. When we give
does.
people an idea of how they're wired to perform,
Yes.
what they're wired to perform, and do we have them in the right role?
Right.
Right. And then can we give them what they need to succeed? Again, the art of leadership.
Right.
Right. But when we're thinking about access, is how do we get people who typically may not have access to resources that others have resource to?
Right. Right.
How do we get them, more access?
Yeah.
Might not get them all the access, but we can get them more access, get them more training and development, coaching, the things that they need to succeed. Like, how do we begin at earlier ages to introduce them to the language of success?
Yeah.
Like your father did, your mother did, like my dad, my father, my mother did, right? In our homes, we were introduced to success early on, right? And we had an example to follow. That's the leadership part that I'm talking about.
Yeah.
So it's all going to come down to what leaders, like an MLK and others, modern day leaders as well,
Sure.
that would take it upon themselves, right, to lead a movement. And if Dr. Greg was here, he would say, it doesn't matter who's in the White House.
Right.
It matters is in your house.
Who's in your house?
And what are you teaching, leading, an example?
Absolutely.
What do you say about the others
Absolutely.
that are not like us?
Right.
What benefit do you give those that are not like you versus the benefit you give those that are like you?
Yeah.
It's always easy to give benefit to those who look like me,
Yeah.
or act like me, or speak like me, or teach like me, or come from where I come from. That's always easy.
Yeah.
The most difficult part is, how do we give the others, right, access? How do we give them equity? How do we understand that when we have diversity, right, things can be better because you get multiple perspectives.
Yeah.
You get language. You get difference.
Right.
Difference can make things better, but it's work. When you have difference, you have to work at it.
Right.
Right. So there's some work that needs to be done. We're all willing to acknowledge that. The question is, how patient can we do as we do the work? Can we be as we do this work right
Yeah.
here?
And I like what you said. We have to work together. And how do we? Because it's easier to clash.
Right.
I think it's much easier to clash
Right.
than it is to work together.
Right.
And I think that's where America still has some healing to do. It's getting better. When will it get better? I don't know. We know from your story about your dad being a sharecropper, successful business.
But just look at your
business-
mom, look at your mother, look at your father.
Absolutely, man.
Right?
Absolutely.
Look at your kids.
Absolutely.
Look how your kids are succeeding.
Absolutely.
Look how our kids are succeeding.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah.
So again, is race an issue? Absolutely. And I think it's going to always be like that because of the nature of people, and the nature of people's heart. Right. We just see that throughout history.
Sure.
Wherever there's difference, a dominant culture will take advantage of the less dominant culture. That's history. I don't care if it's here in America.
Right.
There's no place you can go, and they've studied.
And that's
this.
culture on culture. That's just not
Yeah.
one culture versus another culture.
Right. And
That's
you
culture
always
on
see,
culture.
dominant, takes advantage of the less dominant, and
Yeah.
interculture, and our own African American culture.
Absolutely.
Right. When we see difference, straight hair versus curly hair,
Yep.
dark skin versus light skin, our own intercultural clashes.
Right.
Right, outside of the things that we clash with on the largest part of society,
Right.
dealing with all those things,
Right.
right? And you're in the Caucasian culture, same thing.
Mm-hmm.
Eastern Europeans versus Western Europeans. Whenever there's difference, there's going to be clashes.
Mm-hmm.
The question is, what do we do to minimize that so we can make America better and make the world better?
Yeah. That's a great point. Stephanie,
Well, this is where I go back to.
Go ahead.
Okay, so we all have our prejudice. It is what it is. What it is. We have it, even if we have the best of intentions.
Right.
Then tell me because I've been reading this for a month. I still don't understand why you think it's a bad thing to teach. Then why is critical race theory? No, I get it. You don't want to be seen as a victim or but how do you you hear what I'm saying?
Yeah. So Hawk,
Why isn't this important?
Yeah,
that we're learning
Well,
that that it does exist in every facet of our in everyday life.
Yeah. What I'm saying is my position on it is I think it should be taught as you leave the word slavery in history because it was a fact.
Oh, so don't change it.
Don't
sugarcoat it.
Slavery was a fact.
Right.
We were enslaved people. Does that make all white people in 2023 bad?
No.
Does that make your culture or your family bad? No. Does that mean that?
But there's a shame attached to it.
But it doesn't have to be.
But it doesn't have to be.
My parents didn't have slaves.
but-
That's
but-
correct. But it doesn't
came-
have to be.
we came
But it doesn't
from,
have to be.
So my position,
50s
my position on critical race theory is that we teach the truth. We teach honesty. We teach that yes, black people were enslaved. Yes, it was a stain in America. Yes, but do we hold that over our head to say you're a bad culture or you're inferior to white people? That's where it's wrong.
That's my issue.
That's where it's wrong, Stephanie.
That's my issue.
That's why I'm saying we teach the truth.
Yeah.
And we say, yes, black people were enslaved. Yes, we were. We were brought over here against our will. We made white people rich in the South with sugar cane and cotton, and those are all facts. But black people aren't inferior to any race. All white people aren't white supremacists, which is why we have to be very careful of how we teach it and how we handle
I agree
our
with that.
children. That's my stand on it. That's my stand, because I don't teach my daughter to hate. I don't hate. I don't teach my son to hate. I teach my son to love. Now, I teach my son the truth. You're a black man
In society.
in America.
Yeah.
What you go out here and do, the court system will look at you as opposed to a 13-year-old white male doing something and a black male doing something. Will the judicial system say, we'll give him a year in prison and the white male, we'll put him on probation? Absolutely. That is a fact. Is that systemic racism? That is systemic racism. But we can't harp on it. So what do we do with our black males? Hey, that's what I mean by we have to be very careful about how we navigate critical race theory. And we have to be very careful and not be so pro-black that we hate all white people or be so pro-white that we become white supremacists and are trying to live together. Does that make sense? So we got to find...
It's never the extreme.
It's never the extreme.
Right. When we find the extremes,
Yes.
right, we find the divide greater.
Right.
We talk about this in behavior.
Right.
The closer you can be towards seeing the continuum, right, the easier it is to see both sides.
That's correct.
The further I'm away out of this camera, the harder it is to see your perspective.
That's correct.
The closer I'm to you,
Right.
the easier it is to see Stephanie's perspective
Right.
and your perspective,
Right.
but being willing to listen.
Right. So
Right.
with that, that's a great point, Jay. So with that, now how do we navigate that as adults? Because kids are in their world, right? How do we navigate that? Well, we get judges and we get prosecutors and we say, hey, listen, same sentence, same age, same crime. You gotta have the same punishment. That's how we solve that. And we got to hold them accountable. We got to hold our congressmen. We got to hold our senators and anybody that's in political office. We got to hold them accountable for these laws and these things that they're passing that could do harm to either culture, no matter what. Do Hispanic males at the at an age of 13 and a black male at 13 and a white male at 13, will they all get the same sentence for the same crime? I doubt it. I doubt it.
But I've had the conversation with my current wife.
Yeah.
You know, of Mexican descent, and I've said the very same to her that I said to my son, who's half black, half white. It's, regardless of whether he's half Mexican and half white, he will be seen as a brown man.
That's
in society.
correct. That's correct. And that is a fact.
Regardless of what his dad is.
That is
they
a
will
fact.
see him as a brown man. They will treat him as a brown man.
That is a fact.
The sooner he understands discipline, respect,
That is a fact.
hard work, right? The more he'll have an easier time transitioning into the real world.
That is a fact.
But you have to prepare him with that fact.
That's correct.
You have to prepare him with that fact. Well, let me give you a really cool story about how we start to educate people. It really is about education and honest and authentic conversation.
Yep.
We're not going to get it all solved,
Right.
but we can keep working toward it.
And Jay, as you do yours and Stephanie, I want you to chime in.
Yeah.
So we can get ready to close. But Jay, I want you to finish. Stephanie,
Yeah.
you in. Then I'll close this out because I want
Yeah.
to play a little excerpt of finish of the speech. as
Great.
we
Well,
close
I'll let
out.
Steph
Yep.
chat. So we had there was a situation at one of the local junior colleges, and I got a call and said, Jeff, we want you to come and try with the students. I can't remember the name of the club, but it was an African American club at one of the local colleges, and they said, we want you to come and chat. There's some racial discord going on on the campus. And I said, well, if you call me, I don't come politically correct. You know that.
Right.
Yeah, we know. I said, okay. So I just want you to understand. Okay, cool. So there was a situation where the N word was used and written on like the concrete, etched into the concrete, and they found the person that had done it, and that was a big thing going on. And it was the question of, black lives versus white lives, right? So I go to the class and I asked what was going on. I started listening and started getting the multiple perspectives from the black students, and I got the perspective from multiple people before I got to the school. And I went to the board and I drew a picture of a person, and I filled in one side that was black and I left the other side white. I said, so this picture represents my kids. So which side is more important, the black side or the white side?
Right.
For
Great
both,
analogy, by the way.
both sides matter.
Yeah.
Right. Again, we have to strive for equity, right? Equality's on the horizon, but it's a moving horizon, right? Equity's better because I can get you what you need if I understand what you need to succeed, right? If it's more reading skills that you need, that's equity.
Yeah.
If it's more access to mathematics and counselors and all
Sure,
that, mental health services and better health care, that's equity,
Sure.
right? But my whole point to those students were all people do matter. And we do understand that there has been cultures in society that have been made to feel less than,
Right.
right? And how do we begin to navigate that so that we do have equity for all people?
Right.
Because that's what a great social experiment called America is. Remember, it's an experiment. And we're the only one that did it really successfully, really early on. We've done it better than most countries, even in our limited history.
Sure.
Having traveled to 15 countries, I understand America has, for all that it has wrong, there's a lot right.
Yeah.
That's why people want to come here and will do what they have to come here. Unbearable things to come here. So I'm encouraged that we do have people that, again, want to engage in this dialogue and create influence for everybody to be involved in this movement here. So, Steph, we'll let you wrap it up.
Oh, I'm gonna let Terry wrap it up because
Okay.
I was just gonna say I have all these notes here. I was all ready to explain why I thought critical race theory was important and everybody should know. I enjoyed.
Yeah.
I,
Yeah.
I have all these notes that are now I have to go back and reread this.
That's
'Cause
okay.
now that I hear your perspective, I do see it differently.
Yeah.
Like I was thinking that if you didn't teach it in school, it'd be like almost like silencing it. When that's not the case. We
No,
just need to make
no,
the
no,
no, it needs to be said. It just needs to be cleared up,
absolutely.
and we're not victims.
That's correct.
I'm not a victim. You're not.
I'm not a victim.
Right.
I'm not a victim.
No,
I guess
victim.
it just needs to be. We just need to do better.
We need to do better. I like that. We need to do better. And it starts with us. It starts with our generation, based on what our parents taught us, right? We're teaching our kids, and they will teach their kids. And that's how we begin to change the world, you know? So with that, we're going to close. Thank you, Jay, for joining us, for coming into town.
My man.
My man from long time ago, back 5th grade band camp. We've been friends forever. And Stephanie Mona from high school. Two beautiful people, two beautiful souls, and I'm happy to take this journey with. And I love you both. So with that, we're going to close the show, but I want to just encourage everyone to just continue to support our mission, support what we're doing. The work we're doing is phenomenal. You know, you're going to hear a lot of stuff on social media that's negative, that's one-sided, but when you look at our perspective of how we have conversation, this is the way conversation needs to be had. We need to tell the truth. We need to respect each other's opinion. Because everybody has a perspective. We need to respect each other. And just because we disagree don't mean we have to hate each other.
That's
and
right.
I think that's in the world too.
right.
You know, I think that's in the world too. So with that, you guys want to say goodbye and then we'll sign off with our...
Together, we're going to change the world.
Absolutely. Absolutely.
Of their captivity. But 100 years later, the Negro still is not free.